Well, hello friends out there on YouTube land. Today we're going to be talking about wireless audio solutions for YoloBox. It's going to be a great video. Stick around. Let's jump right into it. Hey friends out there, I hope you're having a good night tonight. Today we want to talk about a viewer requested question. It's going to be a lot of fun to chit chat about. We're going to talk about some things, but before you get into that, so with that being out of the way, if you find anything that you like, links will be down in the below if you want to get one. Help support the channel. Okay, that's out of the way. So let's jump right into it today. Today we're going to be talking about what microphones can you use to stream with YoloBox wirelessly. Like you want to get your sound from something, the microphone, from the person, from the soundboard. How do we get it into YoloBox? A couple caveats. This is a live stream. I'm sharing this with you right now. It looks like... All right, friends, we are back. That's one of the beautiful things about YoloBox. As we go live and things like that, we can actually change the settings as our network signal changes. Now, I like to do a lot of these things live for one reason, and this kind of goes into what we were talking about. And that is that YoloBox itself can only be the hub from where you're getting your internet signal from. Today, Labor Day weekend here, everyone's on the internet. I'm trying to stream live, and I'm only getting about 10 megabits per second upload at a max, and that's intermittent at best. Currently, I'm streaming at 3,000 kilobits per second at 24 frames per second. That's what I've chosen to go for, and that's what's getting me through at 1080p. When I was trying to stream at 5,000 kilobits per second at 30, it just wasn't working. So we're going to go ahead and allow you guys to hear that. Later on, I'm going to go through and clip that part out. So we're about to get this going one more time from the beginning. Ready for that intro? Hey friends out there in YouTube land, this is Rob. I'm ready to get back into this beautiful tutorial about what the best microphones are to use with YoloBox and live streaming. It's going to be a big fun day and I can't wait to share all of that information with you. Guys, if you've already been around for the first few minutes, comment down below. We know your secret. And we'll go on from there. Today we're going to be talking about YoloBox and some really great microphones to use. I've got a couple of different wireless microphones down here that I'm going to share with you. Before we jump into all that, I want you to know that none of this content is sponsored. YoloBox, YoloLive didn't ask me to do any of it. I'm sharing this with you in order to help you out, to make you a better live streamer so you can know the tips and tricks to get on out there and get moving, just like the one we did earlier in the secret down below. So now that you know that, if you find any of this helpful, don't forget to use those Amazon or PayPal links down below. Okay, useless plug, said and done. Today we're talking about wireless microphones. Whether you want to go handheld like this or if you want to go something with a lavalier mic, those choices really depend on your task, but have nothing to do with how you get that sound into your device. For example, if you want to record someone speaking, you might use a Tascam, or you could use something like a well, of course, the Tascam, the Zoom. I got plenty of little Zoom products over there. You could use something like the Rodecaster Pro over here. There's lots of different ways to record audio. But how do we get audio into your YoloBox, right? I mean, you can have a long cord for 100 feet wherever it's going. I don't think so. So wireless audio is, without a doubt, the #1 way that you're going to do that. And today, we're going to be talking about those things. We've got several different types of systems here that I've used. I've used lots over the years, and these are what I have kind of settled on. We're going to be talking about 2 Kamika systems today, 1 Sennheiser system that I use here. I'll also share my experience with a couple of other systems, even some expensive ones like Rode, the Wireless Go series, and why I chose some of these instead of to use those. And it's not necessarily about quality. Sometimes it's about quality versus price. The conversation will be listed down below in timestamps just after we get through doing all of this stuff. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of the stuff back here on the screen so that you can see how we connect things. Today, we're going to be talking about UHF versus 2.4. Those are the 2 most popular ways you're going to be using wireless. Don't believe what the manufacturers say about how many feet you can go line of sight. That's all a bunch of bogus. I'm going to share that with you now. We're going to talk about how to connect, specifically the settings on YoloBox and audio, or the different on right there. Basically, there are 2 different, there's actually many different transmission standards, okay? But the one that you will most likely find no issue with around the world is Bluetooth. That runs on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. Most of your Bluetooth adapters are going to be good to go in any state or territory or legal environment, and they will not interfere with the different radio frequencies that emergency services may use for things such as UHF, RHF, VHF, RHF, excuse me, just UHF, VHF 1.8, things like that. There are different standards, 900 megahertz, things like that. You will find that there are many different standards of these ultra high frequency radio waves that are illegal in different areas. Different bands are reserved, and you cannot use those bands in that area, even if your device is capable of operating. One example that comes to mind and why this is important is a local emergency medical services used to use things on the shortwave band, sometimes on radio frequencies, and even in ham. Well, you wouldn't have any of these in ham frequencies, or amateur radio frequencies. But there are scanners that can pick up those local frequencies, and that's one way you would know if you were in an area that's got that local frequency requirement. The nice part is that when you buy UHF or VHF devices, you will see a frequency range published on them, on the back or on the documentation somewhere, and it will state specifically the ranges for which they operate. The reason that that's important, I'm going to give you this show of these things down here. The reason that that's important to be, but this Kamika quad system over here is a UHF system. This Kamika boom system right here is a digital, which is a 2.4 gigahertz system. And then the Sennheiser system that I've got right here, which is an XLR-based system, is also 2.4 gigahertz. But look at its size as well. It's kind of an in-between. It's skinny, but it's also tall. Then that's going to bring us to another thing. You might find a couple of differences in connection types. We're going to talk about connection types later, but the connection type actually doesn't really matter because cables can adapt you to any way that you need. Another consideration to think about when these UHF versus 2.4 used to be a long time ago, 500 megahertz was it when wireless telephones and things like wireless headsets, not cell phones, right? But they came about. That was a big deal. And then when you think about things like, I don't know, when you think about some of the other types of things like RHF and different signals and headphones like that, they were in the 900 megahertz range. And these things were kind of big. They were big and bulky, had big stations and stuff like that. And we got to kind of consider that here. There are a lot of different systems, but in this range, really systems, how many things on your network are currently using the 2.4 gigahertz system? Well, let's count them out. Your TV, your cell phone, your computer, your router, well, your cell phone, we said that, but any device, our remote controlled car, but more importantly, everybody out there around there is also broadcasting that 2.4 gigahertz system. So 2.4 gigahertz, the Bluetooth system is basically an amateur system because everybody's using it. It's very crowded right now. And it used to be that way with like the 900 and the 500 megahertz and like the 1.3 and 1.4 gigahertz systems, and the 1.5 gigahertz systems were like the intermediate. They were the professional systems. But now what we find is that when you've got more devices on the same network, those devices themselves, well, they create chatter. And there are different technologies that each one of these systems uses in order to avoid the chatter and the static on the network. For example, digital systems like this right here will actually frequency hop. So they'll do an encoded frequency hop on the 2.4 gigahertz. Even the Sennheiser and the Kamika both do this, things like that. Whereas over here with your megahertz, your 900 megahertz system with the Kamika quad, it does not do that at all, right? So you have to choose a network, or choose a station that you have out of your available stations, and then that's what you're going to use. That's going to be it. So the reason that that's important is because the density and the amount of, but the reality is it's not necessarily always better. Sometimes the much less crowded 900 or 500 megahertz system is going to be a better choice for you because there's just far fewer people out there. Here's an example. I do a lot of live stream weddings on the beach, Virginia Beach. Okay, there can be 10,000 people in a 2-block radius. Okay, 2-block radius, right around me, there can be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people on the beach in the immediate area covered by this same signal right here that this is using, that 2.4 gigahertz system. So there's thousands of people in that space, although this particular system is talking to itself. It's trying to navigate around all of those other incremental spaces on a millisecond basis to transmit the signal. And you can get chatter in there called static. You can just get rid of it. No one's using 900 megahertz out there, right? So if I don't use that, I can just choose my own signal, and it's almost like being in a silent closet all by myself. Nobody's on it. Whereas when I'm out there with a digital system, sometimes Well, if anybody's out there, you know they're on the same network or on the same transmission network, because if they've got a phone, it's got Bluetooth and they're all out there. So there are some considerations that way. Here's another one. We're going to get this into transmit power in just a second. In fact, we may want to do that now. So before we get on to all of that, what I want to say here is that when you're looking at systems like this, when you're actually answering this question, right, of which one is which, right, you have to think that there's no one tool for the job, okay? There should be multiple, which is why I have several systems. Now, let's actually talk about that. We said that we're answering a question, but I actually got this down here, and it was a question about, hey, I'm a new user of YoloBox Pro. I learned a lot from your videos, and what solution can you recommend for getting audio wirelessly from a mixer or sound console into YoloBox? So that's actually the question that we're answering. And I think the best way to answer that is actually to talk about transmit power. Transmit power is one of those things that's going to let you, well, get your voice out, so to speak. And that voice is going to be the voice that you have mic'd, however you do that, right? So when I talk about this, there's a lot of more systems. I want to actually take you over to the computer to show you some of them. Okay. So the system that I use, my number one recommendation is actually a two-part setup. And it depends on how you use your devices. We'll talk about that later in how you connect and some considerations. But realistically, I really like the Boom XU Quad. And true, it is a little bit larger than the Boom X, the transmitter for the Boom XU Quad. And here's the transmitter for the Boom XD. I like these. Actually, I like the Boom XU Quad quite a bit, because with the Quad, I can connect 4 separate microphones directly to one quad. Since it's a UHF system, people, or 10 people or 12, I just put them all on the same channel. Now, it's important to know that your channel has a receiver, and your receiver is how you get the microphone voice, the transmit power from, or the transmitted sound from whoever you're miking into your YoloBox. We'll talk about that and how to connect. But there are some advantages of having a larger system like this. Number one, antennas, and number two, transmit power. The Kumika Boom XU Quad has a transmit power of 15 decibels. This is important. We're going to talk about what 15 decibels are in a second. The Boom XD has a transmit power of 10 decibels. So does the Sennheiser XSWD. Going down that line, so does this new Kumika VD Live 10, okay, which is a cute little compact system following behind the Pico mic design. We'll talk about Pico mic later. Here's the Boom XU, the Boom XD Pro. Make sure you can see that. Here's the Boom XD Pro. Here's the Sennheiser XSWD, one of the sets that I have, right there. Here's the Rode Wireless Go 2. Here's the Lark by Hollyland, the M1, also going for kind of a Pico mic design. Actually, a little bit of a Ceramonic in there too. Then we got the Lark 150, one of my favorites. Also, okay, you guessed it. Well, actually, the Lark 150 is a little bit more. The Lark 150 can go up to 50 decibels, right? But the Lark, the Lark M1 and all of the other ones, they're only 10 decibels. Now, 10 decibels is important because that means that all of those systems, other than their advanced proprietary technology for frequency hopping and things like that, they're all separate, right? But they all have the same transmit power, which means not very far. And I want to talk a little bit about, you know, how far is 10 megawatts? Or sometimes things are, or sometimes when we say this has a transmit power of 10 decibels, that's an industry standard description in place of milliwatts. A milliwatt is like 1.25 decibels. So 10 decibels on a logarithm, the Kumika Boom XU Quad was 15 decibels. So I found this little website, link will be down below. You can use it down below. 15 decibels is actually about 32 milliwatts. Well, 32 milliwatts is roughly 3 times more powerful. It's really like 2.8 times more powerful. And that is a real difference. You notice that. When you go outside, the reason I don't use the Rode Wireless Go isn't because it wasn't any good. I don't particularly like the shape. It's bigger. You see it more. But the big deal with it was that it's also only 10 milliwatts. Okay, so because it's only 10 milliwatts, it costs twice as much basically as the Kamika Boom XD. So why would I pay twice as much for about the same range? Now, I can't say that it was better in my testing when I had it. I can tell you that I chose the Kamika Boom XDs for the reason I just said. I don't notice that the Boom XDs were worse, and it was basically twice the price for the Rode, so I chose the Boom XDs. Sent the Rode back. That simple. I also tried another one called Pixel Mic. It was half the price of the Boom XDs. I did not have a good experience with that, so I sent that back. I didn't even do a review on it. I bought them all with my own money. But when you look about that, when you think about 2.8 times the transmit power compared to here, that means that you can get quite a bit further. And I have absolutely 100% noticed that in my testing. I can't get very far, believe it or not, on a crowded beach, like we explained before, from my receiver and my transmitters on the Boom XDs, maybe 20 feet. That's not a lot. That means I need to put my camera up with YoloBox at the front left pew so that I can be as close as possible to my groom. Sometimes I even ran this on the ground with a little extension cord in order to get it closer and put this in a paper bag or plastic bag and seal it up and then buried it under the chairs so that it could get closer. I don't have that problem with the quad system, the Boom Quad, and it's because of that higher transmit. Now, I also have that problem with the Sennheiser's XSWDs. They are great. I love the sound, but, well, they have the same issue at 10 milliwatts. They just don't transmit very far, especially in a crowded environment. If you are in a sealed environment, like a reception hall or a church auditorium, right? Then yeah, the signals will bounce all around and you'll be fine. These will all work basically the same. But if you're outdoor in an area where line of sight and there's nothing reflective for the radio signal to bounce back off of, like in a field, at a beach, at a parking lot, then the lower transmit powers has been a hint. Can do all that stuff, and it just works very, very well for me and for what I'm doing. Okay, and I like that about them. Of my JBL PRX1s, they plug straight into the back of my Rode. They plug straight into the back of my soundboard. They just plug right in, no connections required. But these are just the ones that I have, right? I want to take you back over here and share with you some really exciting ones, okay? Now, I can't recall. I do believe, however, that the Lark 150 has a higher output, but I couldn't find it on here, and I don't want to say what it was. I was considering this at one point in time. Nonetheless, Pico Gear, this company right here, Pico Gear, they make a very interesting type of microphone. You can see it's very small, with a really great display and interface on a system that charges the microphones that sits on top of your camera. You could imagine that this really appeals to me. And the most important part for me is, other than all of their really interesting design characteristics and everything else, they happen to have a distance or a transmission power of 50 milliwatts, which is really nice. Let's see where we can find it over here. Power source. It's on here somewhere. In any event, I'm not going to look for it. Inattentional blindness is setting in, but if you go here and check them out, you'll know that the long distance version has a frequency transmit power. Yeah, here it is down here, of 50 milliwatts. However, the standard version, be very careful. If you get this, you have to get the long distance version because the standard version is only 10 milliwatts. So you don't want that. You would want to get the long distance version. So I like this one. I like this one a lot. Now, I tried to buy it, and it has been out of stock forever, and I'm not in the need for one now, but this is on my list. Another one is actually the Deity Connect kit. Let's check it out right over here. This Deity Connect kit is really great, okay? It comes with a lot of stuff. This is like the ENG kit, whereby you get a connection, you get a battery pack for a lavalier mic. You also get one for a handheld or XLR mic. You get a connector for that. And you can record directly to this device in 24-bit 48K. But it also goes, I found it over here, check this out, up to 100 milliwatts. Basically 10 times the power, the transmit power of your standard system. So why don't I have that? Well, again, this, for when I was looking to buy microphones, right, this system was out of stock. I just could not get my hands on it. So it's bigger. Out of all of them, if I were to get one I really like, for me, it's the Pico mic. I like the size. I like all of the Pico mic. But that's a conversation for another day. Today, it's time to talk about how to connect. Connecting is one of those things. Man, it's one of those things, right? Check it out. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. Did you see did you see this stuff? Look what's hitting the table, guys. Okay, let's get the microphones out of the way so you can see. Look at all this stuff. If you're going to be connecting, this isn't even half of my cables. You audio engineers out there, you guys know. This isn't even part of it. The reality is you need as many cables as is possible. Never show up anywhere without cables. So you've got a wireless signal, you're going to need to get it somewhere, and it's going to get somewhere and you're going to need to record something. So that brings us back to a couple things. If you do get the Rode Wireless Go 2, the Kamika Boom XD Pro, and the DJI mic, those are, of course, the Deity Connect. Those are the ones I can think of right off the top of my head that have recording built into the device. So if you're recording a wedding and you're live streaming, but you're also doing what I say, ABR, those of you that watch, always be recording, ABR. If you're always recording, then that means that you're going to be able to interrupt it. So you can always retrieve that. On all of the systems I have shown you in person here today, none of them have on a device actually sends. For me, in the past, the way I've gotten around that is by always using two mics. That way, I will always have two different sources of wireless audio to use. If one breaks up, it's unlikely that the other one would. However, it can happen. Okay, so how do we connect? How do we get that, whether or not you're recording on the device or on an external device, how do we connect it? Well, obviously, if you're using an XLR system, you're going to need XLR cables. Now, the thing about the cables is you can't just have one, right? So now we've got an XLR male to female right here. You know what I'm saying? We've got to have that one so that we can plug into the back of the XSWD, right? Yeah. And then plug into the soundboard, right? So that this receiver can pick up what the transmitter's sending. But then we've also got XLR cable over here to 1/8 inch jack. As you can see, you need that because sometimes your audio in might be an auxiliary port, so you got to have one of those. What if you don't have anything except for, an instrument cable? Well, you're going to need some adapters so that you can get that in. What if you need a stereo connector? Well, you're going to need the Y. Here's a stereo breakout cable. You're going to need a lot of cables. What if you want to just get your device, your transmitter, right? Yeah, here's a receiver. What if you need to just get this into the headphone jack or the mic jack on your cell phone? Well, you have to have an adapter, and you got it right there. So there's all these different types of connections that you have to have. And so when I go someplace, I have even more that I didn't show you, but this is just my quick audio bag. I even have a breakout cable that will charge as well as connect multiple USB mics at the same time. So I can get multiple in to one location. There's a lot to it. And how does that work? Well, in this instance, this is the power of XLR. That's it. This microphone, this lavalier mic, right, is now connected. Okay? Let's do it again. You want to try me out? Great. Guess what? This microphone, this handheld mic, is now connected. It's now connected. That's just how it works. Can't get any easier. But what if we were using something like, let's use the Boom XU Quad. These transmitters have microphones built in, but they can also accept a lavalier mic, just like these, just like this one except this one has no built-in microphone. You have, on the XSWD, you have to use their lavalier mic, and it comes with the great MKE2 Mark II. Really good mic. Okay. In this instance, I need to get some output to the input. Okay. So I need a cable like this. I go with my AB out, which is 2 channels, left and right, into my left and right channel on my device. Bingo. So in order to get left and right out on XLR, I have to use the left and right, channel 1, channel 2, out on XLR. But Rob, you say, doesn't this have 4 channels? Don't you want the other 2 channels to come out? I do. In that instance, and I didn't bring it up here, it's in my other case, but I would just use an additional mono breakout, left and right breakout. Although this only has 1, I would just use another of these cables and I would do the exact same thing. But what about if you're just connecting to something like a camera? Okay, connecting to a camera. Well, I don't have the thing on top of this one. I don't have the hot shoe adapter on top of it. On this one right here, I have the belt clip adapter. But I would simply just put my out on top of the camera, and I would open the correct port. Right there, boom. And I would plug it in. And now these microphones over here on the Camcorders Boom XD are transmitting to the receiver. The receiver's picking it up and it's getting recorded. Same thing I would do with YoloBox. Same thing I'm doing right now, except with something different. I would simply connect this to the mic in on YoloBox, and now I'm in. But that means that whatever is coming into here has to come out from somewhere. So if I was using, for example, a soundboard, I would need to have an out, right? And that's where having one of these connectors is important. So here's my out from a soundboard, plugs into the back of a Rodecaster Pro or a DJ mixer, or the back of my PRX1 for my line out, my through, or on the back of a soundboard. It plugs on and out. And with this connector, I could very simply plug that into here, the microphone part. And now that board is transmitting out through the microphone, it's just connected, and into the YoloBox. How do you like that? Now, one final thing. What if you were using an XLR, or if you needed a different type of an adapter? Well, that's where having all those other connections come into play, right? Because if you needed a different input or output, you'd have to have them. It is a game of chess. You got to think about your moves ahead of time so you'll know what you're going to use. But these are the ways you would get that sound out there. And with all of that, it's time to talk about considerations. Woo, we've been chit-chatting a whole lot about this today. And what I want to tell you more than anything else is that your particular setup is the most important part of what you're going to be taking with you. All of these things accomplish the same thing. The biggest question that you're going to ask is, do I need UHF like 900 or 500 megahertz, or should I have something like, well, Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz? And that's going to be important because it's going to help you determine not only the distance, but also the type of area that you'll be mostly using. If you think that, I can't say that 100% of the time the Bluetooth is going to work. You probably need both. But if you had to get one, I would suggest a Bluetooth version of 2.4 gigahertz. I find that the Camcorders Boom Quad, the 900 megahertz, although I like it more for me, it is much more technical. You have to set your own channels. It doesn't do a lot of auto stuff that the digital ones do. The other consideration that you're going to have is like your transmit power. If you're going to buy, there's nothing wrong with buying 10 milliwatts, 10 decibels, 10 milliwatts, right? But that is going to be a limited range outdoors, right? It just will. It will. Line of sight is going to be your biggest thing, and the more stations of interference that are out there, the more difficult it's going to be for this to give you long range and things that come in between. Trust me, I've seen the videos. I've seen them road walking out 600 feet one way. Great, perfect, sure. I have never been able to do that on the beach. And why? Why? It's because of the additional interference. So the additional interference of other devices in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, other wireless RF devices interfering. And if you're in an area where you think you might be packed a lot like that and you might be working at distance, you should totally consider paying more for a system that has a higher milliwatt or higher decibel output. In that instance, maybe the Boom XU Quad would be good for you. Like if you're going to do run and gun up and down the street, the lower frequency transmits through objects better over long distances. The 900 megahertz does, and the higher output, the higher decibel output, the higher milliwatts also gives it range, more range. But the same could be said, would be true with a higher output, higher transmission power digital system like the Pico Gear. That's going to do great too. And the higher frequency may not do as well with penetration through walls, but I don't know how much that would be a factor once you had a higher output. I think if you had a higher output, you might be better. The difference between the two will be that most of the time the digital systems, the 2.4 gigahertz systems, are going to have advanced technologies that help the frequency hop and isolate noise and noise reduction and stuff like that. You will get some of those features on the 900 megahertz technology devices. Definitely Kamika packs theirs with a lot, but even comparing the Boom XD to the Boom Quad, there's fewer intelligent, so to speak, features on the Quad. You have to set it. It's more manual. Another thing to consider is like, what's your recording format? Are you going to record straight to your camera? Let's pretend you were. If you're recording to a camera that's 5 or 6 years old or older, and it was a prosumer, not professional grade, but prosumer in that $2,000 price point, the likelihood is you're at 16-bit audio and 41.1 kilohertz sample rate. You get into newer modern cameras in the same prosumer range, they've all pretty much jumped up to 24-bit audio and 48 kilohertz sample rate. That's important. That jump is gigantic. I would not use the lower audio sample rate of a camera in my system unless I absolutely had to. If I had another one to choose, I would use it. So if you're using these to record straight to camera and then have that signal go from your camera into YoloBox and then pull YoloBox to use the audio from video source 1 or 2, right? Then you're going to be recording on that camera, which is how you're going to save your audio, and you're going to need to make sure that it's in the highest format possible. If you're going straight into a recorder like this is a 32-bit float recorder, the Camcorder Capture X8, or you could use the Zoom F3, something like that, then you could capture your 24-bit audio signal directly on here in 32-bit float and have a lot of latitude needed, but that's not going to be a big consideration either, because if you don't set your levels right in the first place, then when you pass this audio over to YoloBox, it will sound terrible, and your viewers either won't hear you, it'll be distorted or something. So there's no real reason to record in 32-bit float if you're doing live, except for if you're going to master something later for a client, then maybe that could be important. Basically, I don't really think you need 32-bit float for anything unless you know you need 32-bit float for something because you needed it, then you would have a specific purpose, right? The reality is if you're live streaming, you have to set your levels in the first place, and you're going to have a duplicate or a safety track on that live streaming, on that recording device. Here's the Zoom H6, and you're not going to have to worry. Your levels are going to be set properly. You're going to be monitoring them. Your audience is going to hear, and the safety track will protect you for post-production in the event that you need it. So how much is all this stuff going to cost you? These are so many things to think about. Well, I think it really depends. Kamika you can get away with for a couple $100. Porta Capture, $500. This $200. Just using your TV or your camcorder, not so bad. However you do it, expect to spend for a system around $500 to $1,000 at a minimum, including mics and everything. But as an individual piece, you could expect to spend, $250 to $500. It just depends on what you want. And that's going to be it for today. Goodness. Guys, I hope that you found this video helpful. We may record it again. I noticed that we're having some drop frames and things like that. You know, I like to give you guys these things live so that you can see what types of interruptions and things we happen. I am streaming live with YoloBox. Just like I told you before, the issue that I've been having today with YoloBox has actually been the internet. You know, my kids are home, everything else. I'm getting, you know, a spotty 10 megabits per second up, not even a much from me. So you guys can kind of see how that works here on YoloBox, but this is the same type of thing that would happen anywhere on any live stream right now if you were using a live stream encoder, even if I was using Obing. It's been a great time hanging out with you all today. If you got any questions or comments, do leave them down below. I want to thank you for watching and remind you that I will catch you on the flip side, and bye for now.